Good morning, Steph.
I feel like justice is, I don't know, it's warming up in the bullpen, stretching, something. I feel like, right? A lot of stuff happening this week legally.
Yeah, we're getting there. It seems like, the snowball is picking up both size and steam, and we're heading in the right direction. A lot of bad stories for Trump and company in recent days.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that one. Obviously, Trump and two of his adult children must give depositions in a long-running civil investigation into the family's business practices, a ruling that means they could face hours of uncomfortable questioning by investigators in the near future. Attorneys for Trump, Trump Jr., and Ivanka tried to get subpoenas for their testimony and related documents thrown out in a series of recent court filings. So the judge obviously ruled against that. Please explain this to us once again. So now the lawyers for the Trump say they plan to appeal. So how long could this go on now before they actually have to sit for a deposition? It says within 21 days they have to sit for a deposition.
Yeah, within 21 days. They're going to have a right to appeal to the appellate court in New York. They're probably going to refuse to hear the case. So I think this is going to come to a head sooner rather than later. And I'll tell you, I recommend this 8-page ruling that the judge issued to everybody. Just give it a read, because there's some really ominous stuff in there. The most important line, I think, in the whole ruling is the judge said, I reviewed thousands of documents that were subpoenaed by Attorney General Tish James. He said, when a state attorney general commences an investigation and uncovers copious evidence of possible financial fraud, she has a clear right to question under oath the organization's namesake, Donald Trump. I mean, if that's not a tell, the judge is saying the evidence of here is here, copious evidence of financial fraud. Let's get it on.
Well, Tristan Snell, who I know was in that office, the prosecutor, he said Tish James didn't open the investigation into Trump's tax and financial fraud because of animus. She opened the investigation because Michael Cohen and Mary Trump and the New York Times all had substantial evidence of fraud. As we always hear, documents don't lie. This isn't people or testimony, right?
Yeah, and Tristan is right. And the judge in his order said, had A.G. James not opened an investigation, not subpoenaed Trump, Don Jr., and Ivanka, it would have been, quote, a dereliction of duty. So it's not just that she had the discretion to open this investigation. Based on the evidence he saw, the judge said it would have been a dereliction of duty not to go after Trump and company.
Well, one more from Tristan I wanted to get your reaction to. He said, fun fact, the New York AG is investigating Trump for fraud under Executive Law of 6312, which also provides that a fraudulent company may be dissolved and have its corporate charter canceled. That sounds significant to me.
Well, remember what happened when Tish James went after Trump University? That's gone. The Trump Charitable Foundation, that's gone. The Trump Organization, Steph, after Mazars, his accounting firm, pulled out and said, the last 10 years of work we did for you, we will no longer stand by because you provided us garbage information. I added that last piece. That's the inference.
Yeah.
The Trump Organization's days are numbered. There's no doubt about that.
Right. You actually tweeted, so with Trump's accounting firm, Mazars, I don't know how you say it,
Mazars.
Oh. Walking away from Trump Oregon, declaring 10 years of their accounting work cannot be viewed as reliable, obviously because Trump and company, as you said, fed Mazars false information. Trump Organization tries to spin it as a complete exoneration, and George Orwell blushes. I mean, they do that every time, right? The Mueller report, complete exoneration. I mean,
right.
It's just the fact. But what is Mazars' culpability here? I mean, they had to have known he was lying for 10 years. Are they just going, just now a warning? We realize that he might be a crook.
Yeah, this is Mazars getting on the train instead of getting run over by the train. They clearly flipped on Trump. Remember when that blew up? The Arthur Andersen accounting firm, a storied accounting firm, it went belly up because of the dealing it was doing with Enron. I mean, I don't want to make accusations because I don't know what Mazars was up to.
Yeah.
But it feels like they were complicit, and Mazars made the calculation. I'm going to flip. I'm going to cooperate. I'm going to mitigate the damage to my accounting firm, and I'm going to give them whatever they want on Donald Trump.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so what is it you all say? You prosecutors, you have the right to remain silent. Fortunately for us, Donald Trump is too stupid. Um, so Tish James yesterday pounced on Trump's defense of his company's financial statements, saying the 5-page statement Trump issued a day earlier contradicted a court filing by his attorneys. I mean, she said it's not unusual for parties to a legal proceeding to disagree about the facts, but it's truly rare for a party to publicly disagree with statements submitted by their own attorneys in a signed pleading, let alone one day after the pleading was filed. So Trump's attorneys repeatedly stated he didn't know enough to respond to allegations of inaccurate valuations, but the former president's 5-page statement got into detail and possible discrepancies, implying that he had more knowledge than his lawyers said.
And that's one of the many reasons, Steph, when push comes to shove and he has run out his appeals and he walks into the deposition room with Tish James' lawyers, he will invoke his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. He can't testify because his every word is an admission, if not a confession. And here's the thing. If you can invoke your Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination in a civil deposition, and that can never be used against you in a criminal trial, but it can be used against you in a civil fraud trial because the jury will be informed, hey, Donald Trump pled the Fifth. You can use that. You can hold it against him. You can draw negative inferences about that. So it will hurt him on the civil front, but it can't be used against him on the criminal front.
Right. So, okay, talk to us about this hearing, because it seems like there's not endless, but enough lawyers that will just throw their reputations in the garbage for Donald Trump. So who is this woman? What is her? Alina Habba is his lawyer. She asked a lawyer from Tish James' office if they would go after Hillary Clinton in a hearing about whether Trump should be forced to sit for a deposition. She said, I want to know, Mr. Wallace, Ms. James, are you going to go after Hillary Clinton for what she's done to my client, that she spied at Trump Tower in your state? Are you going to look into her business dealings? Of course, the judge stopped them, slapped them down, said the Clintons are not before me. It stems from obviously, oh my God, how many times do we have to go through this? A misreading of court documents that even John Durham is distancing himself from now. So what, I mean, but I've never seen this in a court of law. These are Fox News talking points. And
I haven't either. This is like, Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham for President Trump as his lawyers. It's funny because in my 30 years of prosecuting cases, once, Steph, I had a lawyer hold up a news article and wanted to make an argument based on some media account. The judge said to that lawyer, put that down and don't ever pull anything like that in my courtroom again. Because we actually have standards and rules of ethics that we're supposed to abide by. But, listen, the judge in his ruling also called out Trump's lawyers, saying that, they were not unlike George Orwell. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. Oh, and by the way, the judge said, and alternative facts, throwing a little bit of shade Kellyanne's way.
Yeah.
So this judge was having none of it.
Yeah. Well, and also she tried to claim he's a protected class because he's Republican or something. The judge wasn't having that either, right?
Yeah, I mean, his hairdo may be an endangered species, but beyond that, I don't think he enjoys any legal protection.
Yes.
I was going to say, his lawyer, remember, she was the one who was the parking garage general counsel, so that might explain a little bit of her skill set.
So Hillary Clinton, I mean, sort of implied, well, I mean, at least that she could sue, that there is actual malice in all this reporting of this, nonsense that even John Durham this morning and Alan Dershowitz, among others, and who else? Hugh Hewitt are starting to distance themselves from this ridiculous non-bombshell. Do you think?
And people always ask, what can we do to stop the propaganda from Fox News and company? One thing we can do is to have somebody like Hillary Clinton bring a defamation suit and prove actual malice. Now, we know Sarah Palin tried it and she went down in flames because she couldn't even make her own case on the stand when she testified. But you know what? I am all for Hillary Clinton bringing a defamation suit and going after the propaganda outlets for actual malice.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't that be something after all these years? She just said enough. Enough. I mean, but to the rest of us, it's shows us that the net is tightening around Trump, because you're like, really? The Chiron is Hillary 24/7 at Fox News? This must be getting bad. I mean, and you obviously, as we talk about every week, about DOJ, you just said, we're frustrated at the perceived lack of DOJ progress toward holding Trump and his criminal cabal accountable. You did say, I once worked covertly on a case for 2 years with a highly regarded Washington Post columnist said we were not pursuing justice. So, yeah. You have some sympathy from the prosecution side in terms of what we don't know is happening.
Every day, Steph, we have to balance our frustration that Trump hasn't already been charged with patience, because these things do take time. And I did a long video last night on my Justice Matters channel where for 2 years I was investigating somebody in the grand jury covertly, while Colbert King, storied journalist for the Washington Post, columnist for whom I have great respect, kept on the mantra. The victim's name in my case was Tia Mitchell, 16-year-old girl gunned down in an alley in the shadow of our nation's capital. And his mantra was no justice for Tia, no justice for Tia, no justice for Tia. And the inference was the Department of Justice, my office, and me in particular, we were doing nothing to seek justice for Tia. Nothing could have been further from the truth. I was in the grand jury for years, and I finally brought Tia's killer to justice, but I could never respond to the media outcry that we were doing nothing and there was no justice for Tia. We just couldn't talk about it. Now, that's my little tiny corner of the world example for what's going on the larger stage.